Hello and welcome to Unacademy, a one stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. A very good morning and welcome to the daily Hindu news analysis. Let's begin today's discussion by first looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition, I have chosen 10 important articles that require a detailed and comprehensive analysis. So let's ensure that by attending this class, you don't have to feel the need to read the newspaper late after. So, if you're benefiting from these initiatives, do support us with your likes and comments and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Now, before we start the discussion of the Hindu newspaper, I have an important announcement. If you're looking to enroll for our online classes, then Unacademy is providing you the subscription at just 19,999 as part of the Navratri season. So, if you're a student who's preparing for 2026, 2027, or even 2028, do avail the offer because if you enroll within the offer period, you will also get up to 6 to 18 months of free extension on your subscription. You also get Unacademy's CSE Assure guarantee. That is, in case if you don't clear prelims for some reason, and if you meet these conditions, then Unacademy will be extending your subscription for free so that you can prepare for one more attempt. So those interested, click on the link provided in the description box below. And if you want the PDF of the session, please join our official Telegram channel by scanning the QR code. After the session ends, the PDF would be shared over here. So with this, let's begin and let's look at the first article. On the front page, there's an article related to the violent protests that broke out in Ladakh yesterday. This was a major development as far as yesterday's news stories were concerned. In the Union Territory of Ladakh, violent protests have erupted, where the protesters, primarily led by the youth, they have targeted the police and the security forces and indulged in rioting. Several people have been injured. Reportedly, some have been killed as well. So, this escalation in Ladakh represents a major political and security challenge for the Union government. Because Ladakh, as a Union territory, and a Union territory without a legislature, comes under the direct administration of the center. So, the Ministry of Home Affairs, which is the nodal ministry to manage the affairs in the Union territory, has issued a statement blaming the violence on the protesters who have been demanding statehood for Ladakh and constitutional autonomy under the sixth schedule of the Indian Constitution. The MHA has even pinned the blame on well known activist Sonam Wangchuk. And according to the MHA, it was Sonam Wangchuk who had apparently instigated the youth, which has probably led to these riots. So, this is the government's perspective. Now, let's go a little deep into this topic. Let's understand what's happening in Ladakh and why is there a demand for statehood? What is the current status of Ladakh and what do you mean by the sixth schedule status? See, Ladakh has a very unique geography, both physical and human. If you look at the physical geography of Ladakh, it is known for its pristine environment. It is nestled in the heart of the Himalayas and shares borders with Tibet, that is China, on the other side, with Pakistan occupied Kashmir and Jammu and Kashmir on the other side. So Ladakh has a very unique location, strategically very important, especially with regard to India's security interests when it comes to dealing with Chinese aggression and China's territorial claims over Aksai Chin, and also the instability that you often witness in Jammu and Kashmir because of the separatist movement and insurgency, and the role of Pakistan in destabilizing the whole region. So Ladakh, in this regard, becomes very pivotal for India's national interests. The Aksai Chin region, which China has occupied from India, is part of Ladakh itself, and India is actively involved in dealing with the border challenge here with China. Until recently, we had a major military standoff, which was resolved only last year. So, on one side, India faces these external challenges from China, Pakistan, etc. But internally in Ladakh, there has been a pressing problem which has been brewing from many, many years. The people of Ladakh, majority of them belonged, they belong to scheduled tribes. According to census data, more than 90% of Ladakh's population belong to scheduled tribes. Most of these tribes are nomadic in nature, they're pastoralists, so their livelihood is very limited and restricted. And Ladakh is primarily made up of two districts, the Leh district and the Kargil district. The Leh district is Buddhist dominated, whereas Kargil is Muslim dominated. So I'm sure you can easily understand the significance of the location of Leh and Kargil, how it is important for India's national interests. Now, in this region, the people who belong to scheduled tribes, who come from a very tough terrain, they have a long standing demand to protect their rights, to protect their land, to protect their environment, to protect their culture. And they have been demanding autonomy, greater autonomy from the center from a long time. But Ladakh already has a type of autonomy, what we call as legislative autonomy. So we will discuss that in a short while. But please understand why there is a demand, such a political demand emerging from Ladakh. I will explain why it has gained more momentum in the last few years. But historically, there has been a standing demand in Ladakh, given the uniqueness of the region, the unique location, the remoteness of the area. So, regular development is not easy in a place like Ladakh because of the difficult topography, the difficult terrain of the region. Connectivity remains a challenge even today, be it via road or through air. So, with limited connectivity, with limited development opportunities, the people of Ladakh, particularly the youth, they feel that they don't have good opportunities for education, for accessing jobs. So, this in a way limits the livelihood opportunities and directly affects the standard of living of the people of Ladakh. And also, given how the region has been militarized because of the external threats, this further has an impact with regard to the rights that are enjoyed by the people as well. And on the other hand, tribal communities, especially the nomadic pastoralist communities in Ladakh, they're very protective of their land. They know that the environment here is very sensitive. Today, excessive pollution, overexploitation of tourism in Ladakh, and global warming and climate change, it is having a detrimental impact on the pristine environment of Ladakh. It makes Ladakh more vulnerable with regard to cloudbursts or flash floods, or it is already prone to high seismicity as well. Earthquakes and landslides are a common phenomena. So the region already faces a lot of vulnerabilities, both natural and as well as developmental vulnerabilities. And upon that, they feel that they are being crushed. They feel that they are being held essentially hostage as a result of the security interests of the nation. So this is where the developmental needs are running into conflict with the security needs of the country. So on one hand, you can understand why the people of Ladakh have a demand, and you can even appreciate that it is a genuine demand to protect their land, their livelihood rights, to protect their environment, their unique culture, their faith, their practices. So this indeed is a genuine demand, but is violence the way? Is it the right way to get the demands addressed? Because if you look at the status of Ladakh today, it already has a certain degree of autonomy. Legislative autonomy has been provided through this act that was passed with the parliament in 1995, the Ladakh Hill Development Council Act, that grants autonomy to this region. So back then, Ladakh was part of the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. So within the then state of J&K, the Ladakh region had been set up as an autonomous hill region through this legislation that was enacted by the parliament. So through this legislative autonomy, some of the local administrative affairs was delegated to the local leaders. The council would consist of members from the grassroots, and the community members would be involved in the administration of certain important subjects at the grassroots level. But the demand of the protesters, the demand of the activists and the people in Ladakh is that legislative autonomy is not sufficient. This is only partial autonomy because under the Indian constitution, there is a greater degree or a greater flexibility when it comes to autonomy. If you look at the provisions of 6th schedule of the Indian constitution, the 6th schedule provides for constitutionally guaranteed autonomy with greater delegation of powers, with constitutional guarantees coming along with it. So from 1995, Ladakh has enjoyed a degree of legislative autonomy, but the demand for constitutional autonomy has been gaining ground. The demand for statehood has been gaining ground only in the last few years. This is all related to the changes that happened in 2019. In 2019, Jammu and Kashmir was reorganized by the Union government into the Union territory of J&K and the Union territory of Ladakh. This was a result of the abrogation of special status of J&K under Article 370. I'm sure all of you are aware of this development. In 2019, the special status that had been accorded to J&K under the Indian Constitution was abrogated, and the state of J&K was downgraded and reorganized into two union territories. Jammu and Kashmir has been made a union territory with an elected legislature, quite similar to that of Puducherry, for example. Whereas Ladakh is a union territory with no legislature of its own, quite similar to, let's say, Andaman Nicobar Islands or Chandigarh or Diu Daman, where the union territory comes directly under the rule of the center, which is essentially the Ministry of Home Affairs, which will administer the union territory through the office of the Lieutenant Governor. Now, this setup, this arrangement that was created, initially was widely welcomed in Ladakh. The separation of Ladakh from J&K was widely welcomed and accepted by the people of Ladakh. But the people of Ladakh were hoping that these changes would bring greater changes on the ground, that it would accord them with more rights to protect their environment and their livelihood. But contrary to that, the center's rule has generated a lot of resentment amongst the local people because their genuine aspirations and demands are not being met. They're not being addressed according to the people of Ladakh. So while J&K legislature had elections recently and J&K now has an elected government representing the wishes of the local people, Ladakh has no such representation. Apart from the MP who represents Ladakh in the parliament, Ladakh has no genuine local representation which can bring up these local issues at the national level so that it can become a national priority for the central government. Since the center is administering Ladakh, the focus is indeed on infrastructure development, harnessing the resources of Ladakh, and securing the security interests of India vis-a-vis the threats posed by China. But these plans of the center, with regard to harnessing the resources of the region, development of large-scale infrastructure, including the military infrastructure and border infrastructure, and also dealing with the security challenges present in the region. This has remained the top focus of the central government, which means the other aspects, that is development, education, healthcare, livelihood, protection of culture, protection of land, protection of the environment, helping the people of Ladakh to deal with the impact of disasters, this has become a second priority. Developmental focus has become a second priority for the government because the first priority is to secure the region, build the required military infrastructure to deal with the Chinese threats, to ensure that the precious resources found in the region can be harnessed for national development. So this, in a way, has created a rift between the people of Ladakh and the center. So from the last 3-4 years, we have been seeing rising demands from the local community led by civil society activists, including the well-known and popular Sonam Wangchuk. These protests that have been happening for many months, they have been peaceful. Sonam Wangchuk went on a hunger strike, held a Padyatra as well to Delhi. So until yesterday, all these protests have remained completely peaceful and within the ambit of the law. For the first time, we are seeing things getting out of hand. And even the activists who are demanding these rights from the center, they are shocked by the developments. They're pointing fingers towards the youth who are losing patience. Maybe they're drawing references from Nepal because they would have experienced the footage, or they would have seen the visuals from Nepal, how the youth who are frustrated, having resentment against the ruling class, would rise up. So probably those factors are at play. But according to the Home Ministry is directly blaming Sonam Wangchuk for instigating the youth through his speeches. The Home Ministry has said that Sonam Wangchuk, who was on a hunger strike, he made references to Nepal's Gen Z protests. He made references to the Arab Spring movement, essentially calling upon the youth to take matters into their own hands. And after he left the venue, that's when the violence broke out, according to the security agencies and the Home Ministry. So essentially, it has turned into a blame game right now. But let's keep this political controversy aside and focus on what can be done. What are the demands of the people of Ladakh and the youth of Ladakh and the activists? And what is the way forward for the government of India? The demand right now is for statehood and constitutional autonomy. The statehood demand is more recent. The long standing demand has always been for sixth schedule status, and I'll explain what it is. Don't worry. From the last many years, since these protests have been happening, the main demand was always for constitutional autonomy under the sixth schedule of the Constitution. But the demand for statehood is more of a new demand which has come up. So I think this is more of a negotiating tactic. See, the protesters also know that center may not concede the statehood demand. Given the strategic location of Ladakh and the borders it shares with China and POK, it's highly unlikely that center would agree for statehood status to be provided. But probably for protesters, this is a bargaining chip that you demand more so that you at least get what you want. And right now, what people of Ladakh want is constitutional autonomy under the sixth schedule within the ambit of the Indian Constitution. So, what is this sixth schedule? Under Article 244 and the provisions of sixth schedule, they provide for the establishment of autonomous district councils in predominantly tribal hill areas. Autonomous district councils, or ADCs, can be set up. And currently, there are 10 such autonomous district councils in the northeastern part of India. As of now, it applies for the tribal majority areas in Assam, Mizoram, Meghalaya, and Tripura. Now, I'll give you a small homework, a small assignment. Can you find out which are these 10 autonomous districts located in these four northeastern states? Find out the names and please mention that in the comments below. Is that clear? Now, under the sixth schedule, when constitutional autonomy is granted, it provides for a great deal of flexibility because a number of powers, they are delegated to the autonomous district council. For example, your lawmaking powers. Even the laws made by the parliament and the state legislature can be blocked by the autonomous district council, which is elected through the local community members. There are 30 members in these autonomous district councils for which elections are held, periodic elections are held, which is essentially a local election. And only the local tribal community members can contest. Your regular mainstream political parties are not allowed to interfere with the political process. And this autonomous council can make its own set of local laws and rules in the subjects which are devolved to it. For example, when it comes to tribal land and tribal rights and tribal customs, some of the laws made by the state legislature and the parliament will not apply in these autonomous areas, the sixth schedule areas. And if it has to be applied, it has to be approved by the autonomous district council. Let's say there is a law made by the state legislature or the parliament. If it has to be extended to this region, it has to be approved by the autonomous councils. They can impose their own local taxes to which provides them a degree of financial autonomy as well. And in matters of, let's say, local administration, be it with regard to local education, maintenance of local infrastructure, agriculture, land development and land rights, water management, these basic rights, they are accorded to the autonomous councils. Management of the forest, the environmental resources. Because please don't forget, tribal communities have a great dependency on their local environment, on the forests, on the forest resources. So, managing the forest rights is something that the autonomous councils can handle, as that autonomy is granted through them through this constitutional status. So, in matters of legislation, administration, financial powers, even in few judicial matters as well, because tribal communities have their own unique customs when it comes to, let's say, marriage or inheritance or adoption, etc. So, tribal communities are allowed to follow their tribal customs, and they can even exercise those judicial powers as well without interference from the outside, without interference from the legislative and the judicial system of the country. So, this essentially has been designed as a flexible feature of the Indian Constitution to protect the rights of the tribal communities in our country. But as of now, it is provided only in these 10 autonomous district councils in northeastern states, that is Assam, Meghalaya, Mizoram, and Tripura. So that is the status that Ladakh is demanding right now. The people of Ladakh want sixth schedule status to be extended to them with constitutional protection. But of late, the demand for statehood also is coming up. They want to carve Ladakh out as a separate state. But as I said, this could more it could be more of a negotiating tactic, just to bargain more and settle for what they want, which is the sixth schedule status. Now, coming to my last point, is it feasible for the government of India, for the center, to agree to the demands of Ladakh? What can be done going forward? Because you can't allow for such violent protests in such a critical region. You can't see the destabilization, the internal destabilization of such a strategic location, because internal problems can be easily exploited by the external enemies of India. Could be Pakistan, could be China. They could leverage this to their advantage. That is what really worries India. So the government should act very proactively. Since the demands have been present from a long time, the government had set up a high powered committee. The MHA had constituted a high powered committee to engage with the protesters and the representatives to try and address some of their demands. For example, the government has already discussed the possibility of increasing reservation for the people of Ladakh in education. Right now, if I'm not wrong, reservation is somewhere around 44%. And the demand was to increase this further, and probably the government has agreed internally, right, during the negotiations to bring up the reservation to almost up to 84%, so that the youth of Ladakh have greater opportunities. Then, with regard to jobs, government sector jobs, the demand is to increase the quotas, and the government is willing to implement this. The high powered committee, which is in talks with the protesters, has explored this issue as well of recruiting more Ladakhi youth into government jobs, be it for the Union Territories autonomous administration, or maybe for security forces in the region, or even for central ministries and departments. The idea is to create more job opportunities for the youth of Ladakh through reserved quotas. Along with this, local native tribal languages like Bothi, they are being recognized as official languages. There are a couple of local languages that are spoken in Ladakh. Bothi is one of them, right? So the MHA is willing to consider this idea, this proposal, to give official language recognition to the native languages spoken by the people of Ladakh. And along with this, to extend few other tribal rights, few other rights to maybe manage their pastoral lands, to protect the faith and the customs of the native communities, especially the native Buddhist community in the Leh district of Ladakh. These are the ideas which are being floated and discussed. But before a final agreement could be reached, the protests have turned violent. And that is where the challenge lies for India. So now, on one hand, there is a need for the government to address the genuine aspirations for the people of Ladakh. Nobody can deny the fact that some of the demands of the people of Ladakh is 100% genuine. The need to protect their tribal land, the need to protect their environment, the need to secure their future, their developmental priorities. This is absolutely genuine aspiration. Nobody can deny that this is largely made up. But on the other hand, there is an equally important objective, which is national security, the overall unity of the nation. Because through violent protests, if such demands are met, it creates a wrong precedent. For example, the bifurcation of Telangana from Andhra Pradesh through a violent protest set a wrong precedent, which triggered similar agitations across the country. So that is the last thing the government would like to do, to create a wrong precedent by falling for the pressure that is being exerted by the people in Ladakh, especially the violent protesters. So the government should try to find a middle ground. Instead of just blaming the activists, because we have seen the MHA directly blaming Sonam Wangchuk for the violence. Instead of resorting to such blame games, it's more important to reach out to the people, heal the wounds, give them an opportunity, a genuine opportunity to represent themselves, raise all their concerns, and try and meet those demands which are genuine and which can be met by the government. Providing better reservation, providing a development package, greater financial commitment to develop the region, creating more education opportunities, job opportunities. This is something the government should be doing on its own. So provide some guarantees to match the genuine aspirations of the people of Ladakh. Go ahead, maybe give the sixth schedule status. Since legislative autonomy is already present, you can upgrade the status and provide constitutional autonomy. Because we have seen such examples. If you look at Bodo insurgency in Assam, the same Modi government negotiated the third Bodo peace accord in 2020 and has provided a number of concessions which has brought Bodo insurgency to an end and provided for a degree of autonomy in the Bodo territory. So something similar can be worked out with a good financial package for development of the region, providing for greater local representation, maybe allowing one more MP from Ladakh to be represented in the parliament, and ensuring that the local officials, they are from the local community instead of bringing them in from the outside. Then ensuring that security forces play a positive role to create a trust, a bond with the local community as well, involving the Indian Army and the other security forces deployed here, so that they build a connect with the people, address the local concerns. So if that is done, then India can ensure that the demands can be met without hurting our security interests. At the same time, India needs to be careful as well. As I said, such internal challenges can be exploited by external forces very easily. Countries like Pakistan, China would be waiting for opportunities. Even though there is a reset and normalization of relations with China, there would always be a agenda which is essentially driven, which is essentially to protect China's own interests. So there could be possible involvement of these external actors if you don't arrest the problems at the grassroots level itself. So it's very important to address this on a priority, and without resorting to blame game, the government has to take steps. It has to address the demands and the aspirations so that the resentment factor can be addressed. Is that clear? Because if you look at the violence, the protesters have specifically targeted security forces. They have targeted the offices of the local administration of the Ladakh Autonomous Hill District Council. That shows that the anger is against the government itself. So it is important to heal the wounds, reach out to the people, and engage with them and try to fulfill some of the genuine aspirations. So, based on this, let's take up a mains practice question. Ladakh's demand for statehood and constitutional autonomy creates a challenge for India's security interests. Critically examine. So, let's discuss the answer writing approach for this question. In the introduction, you can talk about the uniqueness of Ladakh. how Ladakh is unique from a geographical viewpoint, from a social viewpoint, from a developmental viewpoint. Try to bring out the geographical profile of Ladakh. That more than 90% of the population are from scheduled tribes. The region is remote. It is pristine with regard to its environment, and it has a strategic location sandwiched between China on one side, where we have a dispute over Aksai Chin, and we have POK on the other side. Right, Siachen is in close proximity, and just further down from Kargil, you have the line of control with Pakistan. So explain the uniqueness of Ladakh and then present the demands which have come up. Highlight the demands, why these demands exist. Recognize that the demands are genuine. These are genuine aspirations of the people. You can't simply dismiss them, right? Don't just take the side of the government. You have to understand and appreciate the genuine aspirations here, but also point out that India has already provided legislative autonomy. In 1995 itself, local autonomy has been given with some degree of powers vested with the Autonomous Council. But the recent changes related to the reorganization of J&K and the creation of Ladakh as a union territory without a legislature has brought up these fresh problems, and fresh demands have come up for greater autonomy. And now the demands include statehood demand as well. So talk about the demand for sixth schedule status and the demand for statehood. You can point out that statehood demand may not be possible to be met by the government, right? But sixth schedule status is something which can be considered. Or you can suggest that the high powered committee of the MHA, which has been talking to the representatives and the protesters, should come out with a plan to increase representation for Ladakh, a plan to secure the rights of Ladakh, a plan to provide for development of Ladakh. You can provide suggestions. For example, a developmental package, a financial package to develop the region and ensure the environment is protected and ensure that local socio-economic development is carried out. So this is something you can stress upon. You can talk about the aspirations of the youth for better education and greater job opportunities, what the government can do in this regard, how it can provide greater reservation and quota benefits so that the local youth can take advantage of that. So try to provide such suggestions and alternatives and conclude your answer. In the conclusion, ensure that you maintain a balance between the national security interests on one side and the developmental concerns and genuine aspirations on the other side. So based on this, I hope you practice your answer writing. Now let's look at the next article. On page 12, we have a very interesting topic. This article deals with personality rights. What do you mean by personality rights? Let's understand this. Let's break it down. Recently, there was a petition filed by Bollywood actors Aishwarya Rai Bachchan and Abhishek Bachchan asking for court orders to be issued, an injunction to be issued by the court to protect the personality rights of these two celebrities. And the court has agreed that it is essential to protect the personality rights of such well known individuals. Now, what do you mean by personality rights? Personality rights refers to the unique traits of an individual, especially a well known individual, a celebrity. It could be a cricket star or a movie star or a politician. These well known individuals, they have certain unique traits of their own, especially for actors and singers. Their unique traits is their selling point. For example, it could be their voice, it could be their image, it could be their mannerisms, or it could be the uniqueness they bring into their acting, the USP, the style. These unique traits of a well-known celebrity constitutes their personality rights. Of course, such traits exist for every individual. Even for a common man, there will be a set of unique traits which will set them apart, right? Now, if this trait is exploited for commercial gain without the consent of the individual, then that constitutes a violation of personality rights of that individual. Now, take for example, in today's world of artificial intelligence, it is so easy to create deep fakes. For example, let's say a visual clip of Abhishek Bachchan and Aishwarya Rai Bachchan maybe having a spat in public just to garner views and make money out of it. The video is entirely fabricated, created using a deepfake algorithm. But don't you think by using the mannerisms, the voice of these individuals, their personality rights are being violated? Then there was a case involving popular singer Arijit Singh as well, where a AI deepfake was created in the voice of Arijit Singh. And those who created this, they were trying to commercially benefit from this by circulating it on social media. So Arijit Singh approached the courts and got an injunction to protect his personality rights. So today, this has become quite common. Several other well known Bollywood actors, Amitabh Bachchan, Anil Kapoor, Jackie Shroff, and many others, are approaching courts to protect their personality rights, to protect their voice, their image, their mannerisms, their USP and style from being illegally misused by someone else. So, what is the legal scope over here? What does the law tell about personality rights? See, in India, there is no specific law as such when it comes to personality rights. There's no dedicated law for this purpose as of now. But however, it is seen as part of the common laws that exist. It's part of the common law doctrine. So, how do you interpret personality rights? How do you make it enforceable through a court order? There must be some legal basis for it. So, personality rights are seen as part of defamation. Because what if someone is misusing your voice and image to defame that individual? Defamation, as we discussed yesterday, is covered both as a civil and a criminal offense in our country under the erstwhile Indian Penal Code and now under the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. So, defamation is one provision through which personality rights can be protected. The other way of protecting personality right is by interpreting this as part of right to privacy of that individual. And all of you know, right to privacy is now a fundamental right under the provisions of Article 21 as upheld by the Supreme Court in the K.S. Puttaswamy judgment. So, as part of right to privacy or through the provisions of defamation, you can ensure your personality rights are protected. Then there is also something known as publicity rights. When it comes to commercial matters, well-known celebrities, individuals, they exercise a legal right called publicity rights. Now, for example, take a well-known athlete, a cricket star, for example. They would have signed endorsements, contracts, which means they've agreed to work with certain ad agencies and certain brands. Only they can use their visuals and their personality traits to market them. No one else can misuse that. So if someone is doing wrong publicity by misusing the material or by essentially infringing on the on the publicity material which has been created, this can be enforceable in a court of law. So through these routes of defamation, right to privacy, and publicity rights, personality rights are now being protected in the country. But again, can it be enforced without any shortcomings? There's no clarity on that because eventually it all boiled down to enforcement. Because see, on social media, in today's age of internet, it has become very, very difficult and almost impossible to keep track of the content which is being posted. Even for these celebrities, I mean, how much effort can they put in to track the misuse of their voice, their image, and their traits, which is being used on social media? Their rights are very limited. The access to such content is also limited. So, in getting them enforced is also quite challenging. Court orders will have some effect. They can then approach the platforms to get such content removed or blocked. But again, enforcement of these orders is a big challenge in itself. That's why the writers of this article believe that there should be a dedicated legislation, that India requires a law to protect personality rights, not just that of celebrities, but even that of common citizens? What if tomorrow someone misuses your voice, your image, and your mannerisms? So the writers believe that there should be a dedicated law for the protection of personality rights. Is that clear? Now, this brings up a very interesting debate. Protection of personality rights runs into conflict with your fundamental right to free speech and expression. This is the other side of the argument. Now, see, for example, celebrities, they've already secured some sort of protection as far as their individual rights are concerned. For example, you have a Copyright Act under which creative material can be copyrighted, correct? Then we have the Trademark Act, where few well known celebrities have already got a trademark for their names, for their personality as well. For example, you take Shah Rukh Khan, Priyanka Chopra, and many others. They have got their names itself trademarked, meaning you can't use their names without their explicit permission or consent. So there are such existing provisions which are there. Then we have the root of defamation and right to privacy, which I mentioned. You can even explore the provisions under the Digital Personal Data Protection Act. Through those routes, you can try to protect personality rights. But such orders, when they are issued, if the courts don't balance it with the right to free speech and expression, this could lead to the violation of fundamental rights. Now, for example, don't you think in comedy, in satire, there is a need sometimes to mimic the traits and voice of well known individuals? Don't you think this is an artistic form of expression? Let's say someone wants to make a meme or a satirical video or caricatures. You take your caricatures, cartoons which are drawn in newspapers, which you see on social media as well. Comedy, satire, they have a great purpose when it comes to the creative expression, right? So, through the enforcement of personality rights, what if tomorrow celebrities will start crushing the freedom of speech and expression, the freedom of creativity by essentially getting comedy, satire, and caricatures also blocked? What if they get injunction orders against them? What if politicians draw a lesson from this, misuse this route to target the opposition and dissent, and to silence the critics? Don't you think this could be a threat to democracy itself, a threat to right to free speech and expression? So that is the important question being raised by the writers. That's why they believe that there should be a well crafted legislation which can strike a balance between protection of personality rights and the right to free speech and expression. So that's why I said it's a very interesting topic. Now, take up this mains practice question based on what we have discussed. Legal protection of personality rights needs to be balanced with the fundamental right to free speech. Elucidate. Now, let's look at the next article on page number 11. There's an article related to disaster management. The article is focused on the increasing incidents of floods in the country and how our urban areas are grossly unprepared. See, India has witnessed some highly unexpected floods in the recent weeks, in the recent months. Take, for example, the devastating floods in Punjab. Almost every district of Punjab has been flooded, that too in the month of September. It's quite rare to see that in the month of September. Then states like Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Jammu and Kashmir, they've all witnessed heavy rains, cloudburst events, landslides, and they have suffered from the impact of flash floods in the recent weeks and recent months in August September season. Then look at the recent flooding and extremely heavy rains in Kolkata and the impact in West Bengal, again in the month of September. Now, this is quite rare because generally intense rainfall during the monsoon season is anticipated during the months of June to July. and with maybe some extension into August. This is our traditional understanding of the monsoon cycle. Usually, to get such unseasonal heavy rainfall in September, it's very rare. It's a rare occurrence. So, the writers are pointing out that this is the new normal because of global warming and climate change. Obviously, weather patterns are shifting, the changes are evident, it's right in front of us. The seasonal changes are different. So, the writers are urging our civic authorities, our disaster management authorities, our governments to adapt to the changing reality of climate and accordingly plan the development of our urban areas. Today, you look at any city in India, be it Mumbai, be it Kolkata, be it Delhi, Bengaluru, Chennai, even the tier 2, tier 3 cities, none of them are adequately prepared to deal with the changes that are happening in weather systems. You can't manage cities based on a seasonal calendar. You can't expect Mother Nature to stick to a calendar. You can't expect rains will always occur only between, let's say, June to July. This is our age old traditional understanding, but right in front of us, we are seeing a change. We are seeing these erratic patterns, extreme weather events, and this is going to be the new normal. So it is we humans who have to adapt to the new reality. So if we have to manage our cities better, if we have to tackle with urban flooding, there needs to be better planning and better preparedness. By the way, in disaster management, planning and preparedness are the two most important steps to mitigate the impact of a disaster. Because these repeated disasters are leading to significant losses for the country. On one hand, we are witnessing loss of life. Human life is being lost, precious human life is being lost. On the other hand, we are suffering economic losses to the tune of thousands of crores of rupees for every single day of flooding. Agriculture can be decimated in the flooded areas. Industrial activity, economic activity can be disrupted. Infrastructure, public infrastructure can be damaged. So, this has a significant economic cost and developmental cost. Such repeated disasters will set back a region at least a decade with regard to its development. Imagine the government would have spent 10, 15 years to build roads, railway lines, power lines, provide internet, set up industries and factories. What if one flood will wipe out everything? So, disasters have the ability to set back a region's development. So, it's very important to minimize the damage, to mitigate the overall impact of these disasters. And for that, you need to plan, you need to prepare. Our local civic authorities, they are caught napping. They are not able to anticipate, they are not able to predict. Forget planning and preparation. They're not even able to deal with emergency relief, right? So, this again has to do with the very structure of urban governance in India. The haphazard, unscientific urbanization that we have seen, the heavy politicization of our urban civic bodies, the rampant corruption seen in our local bodies. Look at your local municipal corporations, your city corporations, the local municipal bodies. Corruption is very rampant at the grassroots level and it essentially feeds the cycle of corruption. These bodies are heavily politicized and the authorities are barely able to carry out the day to day tasks. They are never proactive, they are always reactive. Now, take for example how stormwater drains are to be managed in a city. Every city has a unique topography, right? It has a different elevation and a drainage system. And managing the drainage system, protecting the natural channels is the job and responsibility of your civic bodies. But today, thanks to illegal encroachment, the real estate mafia, they have basically destroyed the natural water channels, the channels which connected the lakes and rivers. The concretization of our cities has affected the percolation of water to the groundwater table, right? So, all these factors, they are essentially contributing to more instances of flooding. The stormwater drainage system in a city is not being cleaned adequately because there's a lot of waste which is getting deposited, a lot of silt, which is blocking the channel. So when there is some excess rain, these stormwater drains will not have the capacity to handle the excess water, resulting in the flooding of the nearby region. So that's why civic authorities have to focus on better waste management. They have to focus on regular cleaning of the stormwater drain, anticipate the water volume when there is excess rainfall. For this, they need access to scientific data. They need access to better forecasting and early warning. So this is where IMD, India Meteorological Department, along with the disaster management authorities like NDMA and the state level disaster management authorities come into picture. They have to provide the required scientific expertise, the technical inputs, provide accurate data and early warning forecasting alerts so that the authorities can prepare on time. They need not wait for the regular seasonal monsoon calendar. It's not as if monsoon will always come on 1st June and end on a certain date. It doesn't work like that. And because of climate change, we are seeing a clear shift in our rainfall patterns and extreme weather events. So you should be prepared whenever it rains heavily or whenever heavy rain is suddenly anticipated. The civic body should be prepared to deal with it. They should be able to clear the water channels quickly, allow for the water to flow naturally without flooding the neighborhood, and it should immediately carry out rescue and relief operations. Let's say power cables have fallen, right? There is a risk of people getting electrocuted. There is a risk of trees falling and injuring or killing people. So civic authorities have the responsibility to take care of these issues, and they need better planning, better resources, and better technical expertise as well. So this is the point the writers are trying to drive through this article, that we need to step up our urban governance, focus on disaster preparedness, disaster planning, make our cities resilient to the impact of extreme weather. Is that clear? Now let's move on to the smaller articles in today's paper. At the UN General Assembly Summit, which is going on in New York, India's Foreign Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, has brought together 20 like minded countries for a discussion on the global south and the common interests of the global south. This is one important development because, see, India has been a champion of the global south. We have been promoting South South cooperation by bringing the developing underdeveloped nations together, by giving a voice to the developing underdeveloped world. In fact, India even organizes the Voice of Global South Summit. India has already held 3 editions of Voice of Global South Summit with more than 120 countries participating in it. India started the Voice of Global South Summit in the backdrop of the G20 summit that we hosted in 2023, and it has become a recurrent feature. So 20 like-minded countries were part of this event hosted by India's foreign minister, where they spoke about common interests and common concerns. They have spoken about the disruption the world has seen in the last 5 years caused by the COVID pandemic, the wars that have broken out, and the trade wars, the tariff wars that have been unleashed, how it is affecting developing underdeveloped countries. So this is a clear message that India is sending out to the big global powers which are responsible for all these crisis situations. If China was responsible in a way for COVID-19 for failing to cooperate with the rest of the world, Russia, Israel are responsible. Iran is responsible for aggravating the conflicts. United States is responsible. And the US is solely responsible for the tariff wars and the trade disruption it has caused. So India is sending out a message to the developing underdeveloped nations that the policies of these big powers is disrupting the world order. So there is a need for global south to come together to formulate their stand, to come with India's leadership, come under India's leadership essentially, and work together to achieve our common interests and common objectives. Because just the day before yesterday, Donald Trump also addressed the UNGA summit. You might have seen visuals of this. Honestly, it was one of the most arrogant speeches, the most hilarious speeches that any world leader has ever delivered. Donald Trump basically ridiculed every country. He made uh, very questionable statements, and he essentially tried to put down the United Nations itself. And he even dismissed climate change as a conspiracy in front of the global community. And he was basically taking a direct hit at multilateralism. See, under Donald Trump, the United States is getting less and less involved with multilateral bodies. Under Donald Trump's administration, the US has been cutting funding for key UN institutions, which are very crucial for managing global affairs. The United States is even quitting some of the UN organizations and UN bodies. Take, for example, UN Human Rights Council, UNHRC, or take, for example, UNESCO. So the United States has been exiting these important UN bodies, cutting funding to these organizations, and taking a direct hit at the multilateral global system, which is led by the United Nations. So just one day after this, India hosting this event becomes significant. The Foreign Minister Dr. Jaishankar spoke about the threat posed to multilateralism. It was an indirect message by Dr. Jaishankar pointing out the speech of Donald Trump the day before, where he had taken a direct hit at the UN itself. So India is basically trying to bring and rally the like-minded nations together, bring the global south together so that we can at least raise a common voice against the erratic policies of the big powerful nations. So countries which participated included a few nations from Asia, like Indonesia, Vietnam, Qatar, Bahrain. There were countries from Africa, like Lesotho, Morocco, Somalia as well. Caribbean nations were also a part of it, like Cuba, then Saint Lucia and Trinidad Tobago. Many such countries participated. Around 20 like-minded nations were part of it. This again shows the leading role of India as the voice of the global South. Next, a quick update on two important topics from economy. On page 17, there's an article related to one of the schemes that the government had recently announced to attract EV manufacturers to India. You might be aware that the government of India has been very keen to bring companies like Tesla, maybe BYD, and European and Japanese EV manufacturers to India. Because for them, India is a lucrative market. They would like to export their cars to India. But India had very high import duties on these imported electric vehicles. Because India wants to create a domestic ecosystem, a manufacturing ecosystem for electric vehicle cars and other modes of mobility and transportation. So the government came out with a scheme a few months ago, around 4 months ago, kept aside 4,000 crores for this particular initiative. Under the scheme, which is known as the Scheme for Promotion of Manufacturing of Electric Passenger Cars in India, under the scheme, the government promised duty reduction, duty concessions for foreign companies like Tesla, and they could sell their cars at a cheaper cost in India. In return, they have to promise to set up local manufacturing, to focus on localization, to create the infrastructure in our country to manufacture the EV vehicles, the batteries, and the entire components that are needed, to focus on domestic creation of this industry. So it was a quid pro quo that the government was promising that we will reduce the import duties so you can easily push your cars into our market. You can try to sell your vehicles in our market, and in return you have to promise that you will make some investments to create a domestic EV industry in our country. But what is unfortunate is that there are no takers for this scheme. Not even one company has approached the government under the scheme. The reason is these companies are probably waiting for the trade uncertainty to be over. There's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to tariffs today. They're also waiting for certain pending FTAs and trade agreements to be completed. For example, the India EU FTA, the India US trade talks which are going on. They're waiting probably for some clarity in this regard. They're hoping there will be more tariff concessions because of the trade agreement. For example, we recently signed a FTA with UK, which has already given concessions for luxury car makers in Britain to bring their cars into India. Previously, they had a tariff rate of 100%. Now we have reduced it to 10%. So, such tariff concessions are being anticipated by the EV manufacturers of the world. So, this goes on to show that the incentives offered by the government of India was not enough. The scheme has largely failed. Not even one EV manufacturer has approached the government to take the benefit of the scheme. Next, the Union Cabinet has approved a 70,000 crore budget for the shipbuilding and maritime sector. Now, this is another major development. India wants to emerge as a hub for shipbuilding. So, the government of India is setting aside 70,000 crores to provide the right incentives and support for both greenfield and brownfield projects. Projects which are going to be built from scratch, and even for projects which are pre existing, which are going to be upgraded. The government would be backing such projects in the maritime sector, in the shipbuilding industry, so that we can create lakhs of jobs. The government is anticipating 3 million jobs to be created through this investment and increase the tonnage capacity of our ports and our ship industry to 4.5 million gross tonnage capacity. This is the ambitious goal the government has laid down for itself. It wants to step up the cargo handling capacity of India, the shipbuilding capabilities of India, create millions of jobs, and this could probably generate economic activity and investments worth 4.5 lakh crore rupees, according to the government of India. The government is also looking to launch a national shipbuilding mission for this purpose. Please make a note. The Niti Aayog has already come out with a research paper on this project to launch a national shipbuilding mission, which can transform India into a major shipbuilding hub in the coming years. So, right now, countries like China, Greece, they have a huge lead over India when it comes to shipbuilding. So, this is one domain India wants to dominate in the future because the one who controls the maritime domain will essentially play a critical role in global economy and global geopolitics. So the Union Cabinet has approved a mega scheme of 70,000 crores, which will provide policy support and incentives to the shipbuilding sector and maritime sector in India. Now, coming to the prelim section, let's take a quick look at the small articles and then wrap up the session for today. On the front page, the Hindu carries an image. The image depicts Garba dancers in Gujarat during the Navaratri season. The topic can be relevant for art and culture. So, what is Garba? Garba is a traditional dance form from Gujarat. It's a type of circle dance or a social dance where the community gets involved and the dancers they go around in circles. In the middle of the circle, there would be a earthen pot with a lamp inside of it. That's what you see in a traditional Garba, a flame lit within a earthen pot with holes. This is a symbolic depiction of the soul itself, the soul inside the womb. Or in some cases, the statue or picture of Amba Devi, a reincarnation of Lord Durga, is also placed. So, this is the practice that you see. And this is a dance which is performed by the community, by both men and women. Right? They go around in circles. They even hold a stick, which they tap in a rhythm with the dancing partner that they have. And at the end of each Navratri or Garba cycle, they also engage in another art form called Ras. Garba, Ras are related, connected to each other, right? So it's a social dance, a circle dance form, which is essentially native to the state of Gujarat. Next, the High Court of Karnataka has rejected one of the plea by social media firm X. The X had received a notice to basically take down content which was essentially deemed as illegal. And X refused to take down the content. It had approached the court, and High Court has rejected any relief for this social media platform. So this brings up one important section. This particular case brings up a very important provision of the IT Act, not your Income Tax Act, but the Information Technology Act, section number 79. Under the Information Technology Act, where all the IT companies, IT tools, products are regulated, We have a set of rules known as the IT rules that were notified by the government in 2021. It has been amended as well in 2023. Through the IT rules, the government has brought regulations to regulate social media, the intermediaries, the social media intermediaries. So now they are under obligation to block certain content, take down certain content, cooperate with the authorities, and follow the strict registration regulation process that has been laid down. Now, under Section 79 of the IT Act, a legal immunity had been granted when the law was passed in 2000. In the year 2000, when this law was enacted, India was still a nascent IT industry. So, to attract IT companies and drive investments and to create a favorable environment for the IT sector, the government had provided a legal immunity, a safe harbor for the intermediaries. We also refer to this as the safe harbor provision. Through Section 79 of IT Act, the intermediaries, such as social media firms, they were not directly liable for the content which is posted on their platforms by third parties. Now, let's say you are a user of platforms like Instagram, X, or let's say WhatsApp, and you post some content on these platforms, which is fake news or misinformation, or which is with a malicious intent, with a criminal intent. Then the understanding under the provision was the company can't be held directly liable for it. Legal liability would be with the user who posted that content. So as long as the intermediaries are neutral, right? A safe harbor had been granted to them, a legal immunity from legal criminal prosecution. But now, through the IT rules that the government has brought in, this safe harbor provision can be revoked by the government. If an intermediary does not cooperate with the police and the authorities to investigate a particular case, to get some data information regarding users where criminal charges have been filed or where there's an imminent security challenge, or if these companies don't follow the regulations of IT rules, if they don't cooperate with government orders and take down illegal objectionable content, then the government has the right to revoke the safe harbor, the legal immunity granted under Section 79, which means the intermediary will also be liable for criminal prosecution. The concerned nodal officers can be arrested by the police. They can be basically pressed with criminal charges, and they can even face a jail term. So X had approached the High Court seeking relief from the removal of the legal immunity under Section 79, but the High Court has refused, stating that social media firms have an obligation to follow the regulations of the land, to work with the government, to cooperate with the government, and follow the rules and the law of the land. Next, Qatar has become the next country to adopt India's UPI, Unified Payments Interface. The India's UPI is truly going global. Multiple nations have already enabled UPI, from Nepal to Sri Lanka, to Singapore to Bhutan, to France, to United Arab Emirates, then even Ghana, Trinidad and Tobago. So many countries are increasingly adopting UPI, integrating their digital payment gateways with India's digital payment gateway. So Qatar has become the next country to have enabled UPI digital payments. The National Payment Corporation of India Limited, which maintains the UPI infrastructure, has worked out this arrangement. So this will immensely benefit the tourists, workers, and the traders to quickly make transactions seamlessly and with very little delay, reduced gaps, and even reduced commission and transaction charges. So this is going to benefit the overall trade relationship between India and Qatar. So that is one development you need to note down. Coming to the last article for today from the sports section. As I always say, usually we never cover sports, but what to do? UPSC has been shocking us with few sports related questions in the last few years. The golden ball, which is given out to footballers, the best performing footballers. It's one of the most prestigious awards in the football community. One is the Golden Boot, which is a different award, the FIFA Golden Boot. But here I'm referring to the Golden Ball, which is given out by a French magazine, France Football. So this award has gone to Ousmane Dembele, a French footballer who plays for the PSG club. And in the women category, Aitana Bonmati. well-known Spanish footballer, right? She has won it for the third consecutive time, by the way. Only three footballers have this record, which includes Messi and Platini. So she has become the third footballer to have won the Golden Ball for the third consecutive time. Just note down their names. That's all you need. You don't need anything else. Okay. So, on this note, I bring my discussion to an end. I hope it was an interesting and useful session. If you did benefit from the class, do let us know through your likes and comments. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That is it. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.